No, I'm just gonna convert some Caradron overlords for Warcry. So you're gonna hear scraping.
Okay, scrape away. I actually tried to find some Crisis Protocol stuff, and nobody had the new stuff. So.
Oh, I got some new stuff about Crisis Protocol.
Listen, we're not starting off with Crisis Protocol. Hello, Terrainaholic. Welcome, everybody, to another Wednesday Night Live.
We're all shaking paint at the same time.
Shake your paint.
Looks like one fucked up chat room.
It's just paint, I swear.
Lies.
So I realized last time that I forgot to paint the belt buckles on like half the dudes.
Aw.
Yeah, so I gotta
Belt
go back.
buckles.
Belt buckles.
Nobody paints belt buckles.
Marines have belt buckles.
But why?
They do.
To keep up their marine like pants?
Because how else are they going to know who has the bigger belt buckle?
That's a good point. They would not know that without belt buckles.
Reavers should have had Primaris suspenders.
Oh my gosh, and a bow tie?
Yeah. Look pretty hipster.
Do it.
So, Josh.
Yes, good sir.
Are you really, really excited about Ultron or whatever his name is?
I am. Thanos, by the way.
Thanos, there we go.
Very close. Same, but different.
Well,
Yeah, that Ultimate Prime guy. Yeah.
Ultron
Ultimate
Prime. Ultron Prime, is that it?
You mean Darkseid, right?
Dude,
Dark
he's got
side.
nothing on Captain Planet.
Yes.
Nothing.
The Cheetle Captain Planet, at least.
So what's this dude about?
There's more than one Captain Planet.
Oh, have you been seen the videos about Captain Planet where Don Cheeto plays Captain Planet? He just
those
kills
are the
everyone?
best.
They're amazing.
Clearly I need to check that out.
Okay,
Because
you
no,
just
I have
need
no
to-
idea what that is.
You need to stop what you're doing and just
Not watching.
look at him in his outfit and then watch the videos when you're done. And then you will report back to us like a book report for next week.
Okay. It's your pop culture YouTube book report.
So what
So-
does Thanos do?
What does Thanos do? He doesn't get to use all the power gems at one time, and that's made everybody online angry.
But isn't that kind of like his thing?
It hasn't made everyone online angry. by
Oh,
the
are you
way.
kidding? I've seen like 13 posts with 2 comments each.
Well,
But I
Josh,
think
I
the
have
more
one.
important question is, not to cut you off, Aaron, but Josh, how does it
Yes.
make you feel?
I'm fine with it. I would never use it anyways. Because here's why.
Not OP enough?
No, I just got killed in my stealth suit. I'm sad. No, here's why. It's because I wouldn't even take him. You have to use a slot in your lineup for each one of those that you take. Okay.
Each gem, so he takes 3 slots.
Each gem takes a slot, and then he takes a slot. So if you have all 5 and him, that would be 6 slots of your 10.
Right.
I'm not interested in that sort of thing. That's just a little too. I don't think, and he's too easily to be killed. Even though he's got all this power, he can activate everything, tons of stuff. He's only got defense of 3 on most of his stuff, so he's still gonna get taken out.
So like Batman punches him and he's down?
Batman
Absolutely.
is not. No.
Yes. His name is Tony Stark in this game, though.
Ah. You see how I'm butchering all this pop culture shit? It's my job.
Well, Thanos is the big news for Marvel, but that's not what we're here to talk about today, is it?
No?
There have been a lot of developments relating to
Oh, that's true.
good old Warhammer 40,000, 9th edition, not 9th Age. Josh, I didn't say 9th Age.
You didn't say it this time. Good job. I'm proud of you.
So let's start with the release of the board sizes.
Ugh.
So I saw that they were talking about how you could slap together the kill team boards.
Mhm.
So it kind of seems like they've been laying the groundwork for that wonky size that they were using for that to make up for how now everyone's not going to have proper size mats, right? But they also
Yeah.
said up to or minimum size.
Right.
Right.
So you can still use your 4x6. But here's the thing. Using the 4x6 is almost irrelevant. Because if you look at their one example for a mission, everything is measured off of the center. So the deployment is 12 inches back from the center. So your deployment zone could be infinitely deep. You can still deploy it 12 inches from the center, not 12 inches from your back line. So that's number one. So you can add as many inches to your back line as you want, and it may not affect the scenario. That's point number one. And point number two is that it doesn't affect the placement of where the objectives go, because the objectives are also going off of the center line and not the back line. So it doesn't fundamentally change the way the mission is going to be played, unless you're playing a super shooty long range army and you want to take advantage of more distance at the cost of being further away from your objectives.
Yeah. Which they would be happy with that.
Well, the other thing that was interesting about that scenario was that you scored points at the end of your turn and not at the end of the battle round. And that makes it a much more aggressive stance of a game. And it makes it much more important to take objectives and less important to deny objectives, because you're not waiting for a full round for scoring.
Yeah,
It's
and
interesting.
I really like it, man. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of like independent TOs just like grab on that. Of course, ITC is going to do it. They've had kind of some stuff with like their wonky missions, right? But we've seen a lot of that in, to a certain perspective, the Maelstrom games, which I will always advocate are some of the most entertaining games that I've ever played, right? Because you don't know what's happening, you get your points immediately. Hey, you do this thing, you got points at the end of the turn. So I mean, I don't think it's that alien of a concept, and I really like it. Like you said, it kind of emphasizes that, hey, I got to be aggressive in my turn. And that's really all there is to it. Because if you don't, you're not scoring points.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns because we don't know what the other scenarios are going to look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that could definitely change things. The other thing that I thought was interesting, though, is even though the bigger games make the table longer, they don't make them wider. So theoretically, even if you're playing the longest game, which is what 90 inches.
Still playing off that center line.
You're still playing off that center line, so it's just, it's just widened the battlefield. It doesn't necessarily change it, and so that begs a lot of questions. Like, if you have characters that can move 6 inches, run 6 inches, and then charge, does that mean that these games are going to be decided on turn 2 even harder than they are now? And if you are the running army versus a shooting army, it's just the shooting army has to shoot you off the board by the end of turn 1 and it's over. Like, those are the concerns that I have, and that I'm not sure how it's going to play out.
I mean, my answer is yes. Yes to all those things. Nothing that we've seen so far has negated the Alpha Strike. Nothing has, again, that we've seen has sought to rein in the various power differentials and units, right? Bring the utility of something on the field in line with what the actual point or power level cost is. So yeah, I mean, I'd say at this point we're still looking like there's going to be some different mechanics, and there's going to be a different meta, obviously, and one unit's going to be better than another. But we're still going to be looking at that same paradigm where we've got a set of units for each army, and quite probably a set of armies that are the things you need to bring if you're going to be competitive, right? Because they're going to fill whatever these new gaps are, whatever these new requirements are in spacing, and when you get your Alpha Strike off, that type of stuff. Because if we're talking about being spaced out 24 inches and needing to capture points early, and you've got to go get objectives in the middle of the board, turn 2, everybody's going to be able to get into assault.
I mean, Aaron's
or
not
combatter.
Aaron's not going to like what I'm about to say.
Ooh, say it.
But it feels to me like the game is going to play a lot more like Marvel Crisis Protocol. And then
Oh
40K.
snap!
Base?
Oh snap!
Oh, that's the thing that they were telling anybody about is the terrain rules really matter now because they're all 2D.
Is that true?
No, I'm
No,
just trying to get
there's-
under your
there's
guys'
no way.
skin.
Oh. I mean, we don't know how terrain is going to work. We don't.
No.
This is true.
Well, but even with terrain, man, right? Like if they do the right thing, they go ahead and make terrain line of sight blocking from some set of values, whether you're behind it on the opposite sides of it. When we did big apocalypse games, it was if there was a piece of terrain in between you, line of sight was blocked. But if you're in the terrain, then you get the regular terrain bonus, right? So if there's a building in between you, you can't shoot each other unless your tread is poking out. Anyway, besides the point, if they do the right thing and they make the modifications for terrain apply to things like your 2-hit roll, we're going to see some benefit from that, right? But it's still not going to quintessentially change this idea of if you get shot off the board, you're done. If you've got to go capture that objective in the middle of the board to establish your place because you need to put down roots and shoot, the guy who's got second turn is going to charge you with every model in his army.
Yeah, and it's a huge amount of points.
It's gonna
too.
hurt.
Like it was like the scenario that they put out. It doesn't matter that they call each objective 5 points. You might as well just call them each 1. You have the possibility of scoring 3 points, in turn 1, and so if the other person holds back and they don't take a turn and you get the objectives for 2 turns, you're now at 6 points. Player number 2 literally has to take over for the next 3 turns to win. So the idea of like maybe you can get away with not scoring any points or scoring fewer points on turn 1 for a turn, but not 2 turns. At least not according to the one that they put out.
I think you're also missing one other factor, though.
Okay.
There's going to be all the secondary objectives where you might have an army that isn't built on actually holding objectives, and they're based on getting more secondary objective stuff going on. Like they can just score secondaries like nobody's business.
Well, I
It's
didn't.
a
What
possibility.
were the secondaries that you saw? Did you see secondaries?
They showed in the thing all the different options. There's the primary and then there's the secondary, where they have secondary specific to the actual
Well,
what's it called?
the secondaries in that
The
example
mission.
were all holding objectives. It was
Right.
so. Yes,
So
again.
I understand they're going to have different ones as well. Like they had those ones that said these are specifically for this mission.
Right.
Then you can additionally use these other ones. So I'm guessing that armies like Tau and other traditional shooting armies are going to have access to different things, different ways to score than just holding objectives, because that's going to be difficult for them to do if everybody's right on everybody's face.
But if they're trying to lower the time frame of the game, then getting people into each other's face is the way to do that. You know what I mean? It'll play more like Warcry.
Yeah, but there's a lot that don't want to be in. Like they're just not functional. Like Tower not functional in melee, so they need to have some way to play the game.
I hope you are right. That's all I have to say. I hope that you are right.
I think that objectives have been a huge part of the game for a long time. They are the pinnacle of your tournament scene. Every single mission is going to have objectives.
Like
by
objectives, do you mean?
I mean a point on the board that you get
board.
points for holding.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's never going to go away. It might get reduced. Someone's going to, go play a Maelstrom game or something else where those type of things never come up. But that's going to be the exception, not the rule. And the rule is going to be needing to hold objectives or needing to capture objectives, right? If you get the points at the end of your turn, you have kind of changed it, right? We also don't know who's going to be scoring and all that fun stuff nowadays. Like I'm assuming it's going to work the same way as the battlefield control or whatever it's called, where your infantry,
Right.
troops are given preference to holding objectives. But we don't know if something like that's going to change, and that could make a serious difference, right? If I can have all these wacky things that used to just be ancillary because they put out bullets can now hold an objective, and I can take my silly tanking Carnifex thing and just, that could be a different thing. I don't know.
That's true. That's true. The other thing that I noticed that I thought was kind of interesting was that the two smallest sizes of game both are played on the smallest size board. So they're both played on a 44 by 30. So the 1 detachment and 2 detachment games, which I think was Combat Patrol and Incursion, are both played on 44 by 30.
I must have missed that. I thought they scaled up each size.
I missed those too.
They do after. They do after.
I did see that actually.
And to me, that just reinforces this idea of get your troops onto the objectives as fast as possible and score them on your turn.
Yeah, man.
Mentality.
Can you imagine 6 units, right? 2 detachments, 2 minimum detachments of almost anything. I mean, you could do it with 2 patrols, but that's just whatever.
Yeah, we don't know what the detachments are going to look like. They might majorly change detachments. But...
Oh, that's a very good point. But as they are now, like, could you imagine 6 units on 6 units in a what'd you say? A
44 by 30. 44 by 30.
Yeah, man,
44 by 30 starting 12 inches off center, so starting 24 inches apart. And there's
that's not a lot of space.
And there's no and the thing is, like, you say, okay, well, sure, one army could start at 12 inches and the other army could start at 12 back. Okay, except in the example, one of the objectives is in your deployment zone an inch away from your front line. So you're just going to not hold that one objective and you're going to let the first player charge and take all 4 objectives? Like, no, like, it's not feasible. You're going to have something up there.
And in, just as a tangent, in Apocalypse design, we had to do those things. You had to have objectives on your front line to give the opponent any chance of taking them, because putting an objective back in your backfield when you're talking about having 10,000 points on a board is just absurd, right? So this is obviously not that, but I can see the reason for it. And with that, I agree with Darren's point. You're going to want models up in the front. Even if they're going to die, you need them to slow something down. I mean, if nothing else, if you play Tau on a regular basis, you got speed bumps and shit that does shit.
Yeah.
So you don't ever want to fight from a disadvantage, which is what you're going to do is if you give up your front line now, since there's an objective on it.
Or
what do you
maybe
think?
I use all your tanks to tar pit and have them on the front line.
Speaking of tanks, do we want to talk about the 2 new sort of tank rules that they've featured?
Yeah.
Yes, we can do that. So basically, you can shoot the things that are on top of you, which is kind of cool, but you can't use blast weapons and you have a -1 to hit them. So it's got pluses and negatives. You know what? It goes back to the rule of 3 to see if it's going to really make a big impact. If we start seeing parking lots, that'll be pretty cool to see again, because I love parking lots. I want to see a war game with just a crap ton of vehicles, and we just don't have that right now, really. And if they are, you'll see Chimeras come back with flamers.
Yep.
To go sideways and hold up the front line. So I think it'll be really interesting if that does happen.
Yeah, it makes the requirements for the vehicles to be effective significantly more expensive, because you're going to have all these side spawns in. So just to reiterate what Josh was saying, so vehicles get some pretty major upgrades, and one is that the heavy rule has been changed so that the -1 is only for infantry, which means anything that's not an infantry that can carry a heavy weapon no longer gets the -1. And I think there are some immediate exploits right there, because there are things in between infantry and monstrous creatures and vehicle and tanks.
Battle suits,
for example. Non-infantry
Troops,
characters.
yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to be amended, but that's what the rule right now says. The -1 is only for infantry. So tanks get that buff. Also, it seems as though you can shoot into combat now, and that's not just for vehicles, that's for everything, which means that your vehicles can now target things that are in combat, which is a
Well,
big deal.
that's not what it said exactly. What it said is that if you have a vehicle that's in combat, it can shoot at
I know that this is
an enemy unit.
This is a different rule. This is a generic rule that anybody can shoot into combat.
I did not see that. Where is that?
Yeah,
at?
where was that?
I,
that?
I think you misread the part about the tanks being able to shoot.
No. What the tank said is that it can shoot into combat when there are units within melee range of it. It cannot shoot blast weapons into combat. It can shoot at the guys in combat, and it gets a -1 to hit them, and you can still target something out of combat, but they can't shoot it until everything around them dies. That's what the tank said. I didn't see where it specifically said that you can target things in combat, but today I was watching Dave from Mini Wargaming, his live stream. And
you trust him?
And I do. And he was on with Honest Wargamer, and they said, like, oh, you can shoot into combat now. And then they went off on it for like 20 minutes and how it's going to affect vehicles. And I started immediately Googling, and that does seem to be the case, that they're changing the shooting rules.
The rule is actually not that. It specifies with the tank rules that if you're shooting at a unit that is within that's in combat with you and in combat with another one of your units, you can actually still fire on that, even though the normal rules would say that they can't. It's specifically in the tank rule that says they can target a unit that is in combat with both itself and with another unit of yours. So in case you get multiple units tied up, they can still shoot.
Okay, they weren't referencing.
Fight.
They weren't referencing the tank rule. I assume that this was a non-tank rule, that just in general you were going to be able to shoot into combat. Because I agree with you, the tank rule did not specifically say that you can shoot into combat as a tank just willy-nilly whenever you want. So it's possible that Dave misinterpreted the rule, or that there's some misinterpretation out there. I just assumed there was some other announcement or rule that I was missing that was going to play into the ability to shoot into combat as a new 40K just general rule.
Maybe there's some assumptions that if the rule's there for vehicles, it might be there for infantry and other units. I don't know.
Maybe.
I didn't read that.
It did kind of like, I will tell you what sort of bothered me though about the way that it is. They're already rule layer stacking in a way that's going to be really annoying, where it's like, here is your rules for the tanks. Tanks can now do all of this great stuff, right? Until you have this particular weapon on it, and then that weapon negates all of the rules that you just learned. So even in this like preview, it's, hey, tanks can now shoot in combat. It's -1, but they can do it unless you have the gun that you want your tanks to have, which is the big ordnance weapon, blast weapon guns. So it's like, oh, the blast weapon guns, which is pretty much the main gun that you take on any tank, can no longer be shot in close combat when they're surrounded by the horde. Wasn't that the problem in the first place? That like your basilisk can't shoot because it's surrounded by a bunch of little guys and it can't shoot through them. So,
well, I think the problem is that no one, not the only problem, but the concern is there's no danger close, right? There's no, it's an acceptable risk to shoot this nuclear bomb into the middle of my guys, which I get from a game perspective, but that's one of the most beautiful things in the entire world, is walking your warhound into your friend's army just to have it explode and destroy their army. It's not always the best way to win, but it's some of the funnest stuff you can have in a game. So I don't know if I agree with the blast not going off. Like, clearly if you did, there should be some damage associated with it, because I'm shooting a tank shell point blank, or a
whatever
giant
is,
ICBM, who cares? But I'm kind of with you. I do really like the idea of being able to use your small arms, though. I think it's going to we're going to see a lot more point investment in those little garbage auxiliary weapons. Everybody's going to have all of the extra 2-point guns, right?
Well,
because 8 shots
yeah,
against some cultists with, your storm bolters is a thing, right? Like that matters. And for 2 points, I use it once, it was worth the 2 points.
Yeah.
So I think that we're gonna see the return of some vehicles that are used not just to get stuff across the table, but that are brought specifically to affect enemy movement, right? And we saw that all the time back in like 5th and 6th, because you could blow up a tank and the wreck would stay there. So you could build your own, walls out of chimeras and rhinos and stuff like that. You brought your fortifications with you, and they had guns until they were destroyed. This clearly isn't going to be that, but I think it has some potential to mess with some other aspects of the game, because now we're not going to be so afraid of driving, and again I go back to Apocalypse, driving your giant scary tank into the enemy and then just having it bogged down and killed, right? You've got something to do. I'm interested to see if there's going to be any sort of tank shock, what the retreat rules are like, right? Because
yeah, if you can now get
there's so
flamed
many
to
other
death while
fast.
yeah, if you could,
Yeah.
if getting charged, so because you can think about it from the opposite perspective, which is now, you can take a flamer tank and charge into a group of little guys and then destroy them, and then the little guys get locked in combat and they can't get away from something they shouldn't be fighting. So yes, that's going to be a big deal. And then the other thing is, are they going to change the points for all of the little guns that you put on it, and is it going to become too expensive to run vehicles in general because they just don't function without an additional 150 points of trash guns on them? That's a possibility as well.
Absolutely.
Maybe the plow makes a comeback. Start smashing into walls.
I got so many of those. So many of them.
What
Magnetized
did
just sitting in boxes.
What did the plow originally do?
It lets you re-roll dangerous terrain.
Which was awesome.
Oh, right.
Which was phenomenal, because if you've ever been stuck in a muddy hole, you know that rhino repair ain't getting you out.
You rolled a 1, you're
Right.
done.
So
This is the best thing ever. Someone's like, "Oh, wrecking ball. Oh no, you rolled a 1."
Really quickly,
What? They didn't invent command points yet. Sorry.
Gamer Addict Frank, you are correct. You can target. Let's say you have a gun that has a blast weapon and it has 2 sponsons. The sponsons can target the little guys that you're in close combat with, and your big gun can still target something outside of close combat, but it says that you can't fire outside of close combat at that other target until there is no one else in close combat with you. So if there are 3 Hormigons holding you up, yeah, you can nuke those 3 Hormigons and then shoot your big gun somewhere else. But if there's 30 of them, most likely you're not going to be able to kill them with one salvo of combi bolters or something.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's going to be some procedural stuff where you're always just going to have to remember to target your big gun and something else just in case, right?
Well, and it brings up the fact our targeting rule is going to be the same. Maybe you just shoot each gun and decide in a row which one goes where.
Yes, my primaries are purple. That is correct. It's not just you.
I don't think they like us that much, Josh.
Well,
They took away measuring, and that was like the way I won the game, was by being able to measure, and people couldn't measure. So
You mean measure in your mind?
Measure in my mind, man.
Right.
You need a 6-inch charge. I know exactly how far that is.
Yeah.
Sean, were you one of those guys that actually measured the length from your elbow to your fist, so you just lay down on the table and be like,
No, dude.
I think I can make that.
I did it so often and I played Tau, so I was running like long range railguns and stuff like that. So I mean, I could eyeball you 36 or 48 inches like on the spot every time, because it really, really mattered to my game.
I agree. I still can do that very well.
That was one of the things that made War Machine kind of fun.
I really liked what they got rid of the no pre-measuring.
That was the worst part of War Machine. That caused so many arguments in War Machine. It's just like, oh my god, you're half of a hair away. Your whole turn is destroyed.
Yeah, but it feels like War Machine people try a little too hard to be competitive, even when it's a casual game.
That's probably true.
Let's call Miranda.
Yeah, I'm sure she'd like that.
Let's ask
her. Hey,
her.
defend your game. We are calling it out.
So yeah, so we covered the tanks, we covered the blast, we talked about the boards a little bit. So we have a question: what do we think is going to happen with narrative play, and is this destroying narrative play?
Why would you think it would destroy narrative play?
Well, the comment is saying it sounds like everything is moving to play quicker, and so what? How is that going to affect narrative play?
Can I take this one, Aaron?
For sure.
As the narrative play guy who doesn't want to do anything nowadays except for narrative play, playing the game faster can only help. And the reason I say that is because I always want more models on the table. And if you could cut my 12-hour game down to, say, 6 hours, I would either bring twice as many soldiers, just by upping how many soldiers I'm allowed to bring, or be super, super happy that I saved half my day playing the giant, awesome, amazing game. So any kind of streamlining that they can do, I'm all for, other than decreasing the model count and reversing their current position on rules bloat, which
they've done both.
Yeah, right. I'm very reluctant that, regardless of the words we say, that it's actually going to go faster. Right? I'm not seeing that.
But that's
not seeing that happen so far.
But that's what scares me about the one. Like, they've only featured a handful of rules, and 2 of those rules are already bloated. Right? 2 of those rules are already contradictory. Here's your rules for tanks. This is how tanks work, unless you take this gun. So we're already in a situation where, of the 5 rules that are published, 2 of them could be considered bloat because they're contradictory and they require additional research. Like, there's nothing worse than going into a game and having a conversation and being like, well, did you check the white dwarf? No, I didn't check the white dwarf. Well,
which white dwarf? There's 3 rules and 3 different white dwarfs.
Yeah, they changed it. Oh, okay. So, I don't know. And they were talking about how the publications have a really high profit margin, so selling stuff is what's important, which is why they put all these crazy rules into the white dwarfs and things in other books. I don't know if that's true, but it's an interesting conspiracy.
And we don't need any more conspiracies.
People buying it. They're just
we don't need any more publications.
True.
I think that for narrative play, speeding up the game just allows you to have more vignettes and actually tell a more expansive story rather than. And I love the big thematic battles where it's like going back and forth, and you're spending all day in like a crazy combat scenario. But being able to like condense those and do more means that you can have more chapters play out.
Oh, 100% agreed, because we'd go 4 weeks in between the games because they were so large, right? That was the scale of the APOC we had. We were talking, 8 people on each side, everybody with at least 4,000 points of models. I don't think we ever played less. We might have done like a 3,000 each person. But I mean, they took all day, and you spend a ton of time building up this narrative and doing all these things, and you have this really fun battle, and then you get to wait for it, and it's like the mechanics were 100% the thing that kind of bogged that down. Like, I can put little soldiers everywhere, move them around a table really quick, and be done in 30 minutes. But there's no rolls, and there's no shooting, and there's no competition involved in that. So
I don't think that they're changing the mechanics to be faster. I think they're changing the structure to have less models. So
they're getting it so people are going to have to get in combat faster. At least it seems. You're going to get across the board faster. You're going to have a decreased model count because points are going up, which means if you're pushing around less, you're rolling less dice, and you're just getting into combat faster, making everything happen, and you're going to need to be playing the objective game, jumping all over the place quickly. Seems like they're just trying to condense it down and make it also fun to watch, too.
Interesting perspective.
I got a question for you, Sean. How come you don't just use the apocalypse rules?
I've got a really, really, really bad take on this whole thing, which comes down to like the very first sentence they wrote in like the 5th or 6th edition rulebook, which is the main rule is to have fun. So we set everything up almost like a game master. There's one person who is the game master, and they're in charge of what happens in the game. End of story. So there's no debating There's no, oh, well, you're allowed to do this and you're allowed to do that, and this rule works this way. It's like, dude, what did the game master say about what's happening? Right? So they're setting the scenario, they're setting the objectives, they're setting the rules for those objectives, any kind of special stuff that's going on. So it's almost like taking the game and turning it more into like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of situation, because you got this arbiter who's managing the game while people are playing it. And that has led to some fun, crazy shit. Like just
But I mean,
absurdity.
it doesn't. That doesn't answer why not just use the new Apocalypse rules where the units get grouped into trays and stuff like that.
Because specifically because my group wants to throw 400 dice on the table at once and count them up. That's part of us having fun, is rolling dice and watching David, if he's watching. I very much doubt he is, but throw his dice against the wall because he's mad. He's so mad. Irritating David is so very important.
Well, you can also remember, when it comes to narrative, you don't have to play if you're, the new rules of 2,000 points, and that's all right. We have to do that. No, it's narrative. Take 3,000. Play it on an entire kitchen floor. It doesn't, whatever you want to do, you set it. So it doesn't have to be set to the confines of what competitive play might be.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, you get to break all those rules.
D, I'm sorry, the screen's a little bit far away from me. I can't see the second part of your name. But what you're saying is that you're hearing that points are going down. I haven't heard of any points going down.
They specifically said points are going up. They said that cultists went up. They said that all the points are going up.
Right. I thought that, I believe points are going up. Unless, of course, that's just a way to sell new models, which will have lower points. Conspiracy!
Or you can spend CP at the beginning of the game to take more models.
Right.
Yeah, but see, that sounds really cool. I like that. I'm going to burn all my CP to get an extra 2,000 points of soldiers. What are you going to do now? I'm going to charge you first turn.
The other new part of this is that they've already announced a new army, and they've made some changes to Death Guard. So they have Bile and his Chaos. What do you think about that?
Fabius Bile is cool. I've always liked Fabius. I had Fabius back in the 90s. I loved him. So I'm excited about it. But it's Chaos, and GW hates Chaos, so it'll be trash.
Well, I don't know about that. Aaron, what do you think?
I don't know. I think, Fabius Bile is super cool. He's kind of like the mad scientist just roaming around the galaxy, making all sorts of crazy creations. Seeing them there with his little sidekick buddy that's taking the gene seed out of a Primaris just opens up like, okay, so he probably has some Primaris Chaos guys that they haven't shown yet. In the picture that we saw, there was one dude that looked kind of like a Chaos Lord with the Fabius Bile backpack, kind of. He looked new, but no one else looked new in that picture. So I have a feeling we're going to see some more stuff there.
I believe that's his Churgeon.
His Churgeon. So, I think we're going to see some new stuff there. I think it could be cool. Now, it'll be interesting to see how it plays with any other factions, if it will soup at all, if it's going to just...
I hope there's no soup. I hope soup is eradicated.
Oh, I'm the opposite. I want soup. I actually want them to open up all the alien races to be able to
everything that you want, I know needs to go away, because the only thing that you want is to be able to take the 5 best models from every faction that are completely and totally ridiculous on their own, and then put them together into one completely ridiculous army. Like,
as you should.
I don't want to play against the 2 best Death Jesters and the 3 best Bikes and the 4 best Dark characters. Like, I don't.
Don't forget the Vindicator.
So you're right. I hope that soup is a lot more difficult. But at the same time, I hope that more armies are playable, because if they're unplayable, then that's a problem too.
Right. As a Chaos player, I would be very happy as long as you could play together like the gods alignment, so like Death Guard and Nurgle. Play it that way. Just thematically, for me, that always makes sense.
Right, but the problem with doing that thematically is then all Imperium can play with each other.
It's true.
So it's like, I get it. there's theme, but you can't use the theme to make good rules. You have to make good rules and then allow the theme to add some flavor.
Fair.
And it's almost like, okay, so right, let's just look at that from a narrative standpoint, right? So you have a whole bunch of sisters and Imperial Guard fighting some evil bad guys who knows what they are, and the Space Marine lieutenant shows up with his 3 dudes and takes over command of the planet, right? So he's going to be able to control and operate those other forces, the Imperial Guard and the whatever, the sisters, but they're not going to have, quite the capabilities that they would have if they were operating inside of their own force organization, right? So is there some way that you can not necessarily like hobble those other armies? And we're not talking about the aliens. The aliens are all killing each other. They all hate each other more than anybody else. No one's ever allowed to play like Dark Elder and Tau. Just go away. It's just not allowed. But the point is, can you allow a certain amount of soup? Are you allowed to just go ahead and go into the codex and say, this codex, Chaos Space Marines Death Guard, is allowed to be in a force organization chart with Nurgle demons?
I think there's nothing wrong.
Cool.
There's nothing wrong
else.
with that. There's nothing wrong with that until you get into these situations where you're building lists not based off of interesting narrative play, but off taking just the best choices from each individual and maximizing stratagems that were never meant to overlap. Like, I appreciate that Games Workshop is a large company in comparison to other gaming companies, and they have a large amount of rules, but there is no way to line up every single stratagem and make sure that there's not something stupid going on when you mix 3 different chaos factions, right? And I think it just makes everybody's life a lot simpler to not allow that unless you're playing narrative play, in which case do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think it might just come back to using the currency of command points. And if you want to soup in something, then it's 3 extra command points or something like that. So that there is a penalty. It allows people who want to do it, and you might be able to do something really cool by souping, but you're going to be down 3 command points, which means...
Yeah, they said that it was specifically going to cost command points to soup.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they specifically said that at the like when on the release thing. So that's how you're going to get soup.
And I don't know anything about the technicalities of how they're going to do it, but I'm very much, I think, in the same kind of like mindset of Aaron, as opposed in this because you think it's a good idea, Josh, but also because like so much of the game for me is about the narrative and about the story, right? Like, it doesn't matter if I'm allowed to. I am never going to bring a soup army. I just don't. That's not how I play, right? My characters that I bring to both competitive and non-competitive games come to them because they are the character who fills that role in the narrative of my armies, right? So I play very differently than Josh, as you can tell. But but the point is, right? I would like to see in competitive play the narrative pairings and soups allowed, right? And a restriction on everything else that's not 100% the most narrative thing in the entire world. So for instance, like, the Sisters of Battle, if you want them to be there, cool, they're not allowed to pair with anybody else. You want to play a Sisters of Battle, you're not allowed to have anyone else in your army. Right?
But the thing is that it makes
Marines. You can
just
make
it
the list of
unplayable.
who's allowed to go and what. What do you mean?
I know, but I'm just saying, like, yes, you can spend a lot of time and energy, and you can narratively go over armies, and you can try to rules go over armies, but the ability to break the game becomes exponentially more difficult to control the more soup that you allow. That's the problem.
Maybe you guys are talking about it the opposite way it should be.
Okay.
Maybe the specific super fluffy armies that don't have any mixing need to be only narrative, because if you read any of the stories, they always got the most random people all playing with each other, like Necrons and Blood Angels, like literally in the actual fluff. It's a all out whatever. It's a free for all. So I really think that it's a game, and if you want to play it to be competitively, you should expect to play a competitive army, the most competitive that you're going to come across. If you want to play a narrative and have it just the way you think an army should be played, then I think you should play narrative.
I don't agree with that. I think that you should expect that any army that is for sale and that looks cool and that's allowed in the normal rules should be 80 to 90% competitive all the time, and that you shouldn't wind up with soup lists that are incredibly overpowered and other armies that are just unplayable.
Well, I don't think any army is unplayable. I think they have different strengths. I agree they should make the armies more playable. However, I'll also say that people are very smart and they like to break the rules, and they're going to find the most efficient way to do whatever they're doing. So
That's
to
true.
try to think that GW is going to be able to solve that is never going to
Hopeless.
happen.
It's hopeless.
It's never going to happen.
So what you're saying is just let Josh break the rules.
Yeah, and then maybe
man, mono codex.
Yeah,
Solve it
maybe
right
it's a
there. Plow, done.
format. Maybe it's a format where you can
Oh, you
only
mean like
use
Type
one
2
book.
and Legacy
Like
and stuff
Magic.
like that?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I can get behind that.
So maybe
Super crazy Josh version.
you heard it
And
here.
all
We're
the
gonna
cool
start
people.
Type whatever.
Type CGN mono
Type
format.
CGN, mono format. But you could even get crazier. You could be like, oh, you can only use a main book and one supplement, and that's it for your rules. So you can make it super simple, so you don't need to have 50 books, and you'll have really fluffy.
One of your 16 white dwarfs with a rule in it.
Yeah, you can only bring one, so that's too bad.
You can only bring one white dwarf, guys.
Yeah.
That would actually be really interesting, right? Because if you did one codex and then one supplemental, right? The special card that you got in the 20th anniversary Land Raider box that has the fancy invulnerable save and stuff like that. That's your second source, right? You're not just allowed to slap that into your army for free because you wanted to. Where's your material? Where's your receipt, I guess. But then that gets into a whole bunch of other shit of like, I ain't never gonna buy that model, but I might want to play with it sometime.
I mean, I guess one of the other questions is like, do you think the game is going to be more troop heavy or less troop heavy? Because if I think about what people want, and by people, I don't know who I'm talking about. I just mean what the world wants. It's probably cooler characters that do more things getting into combat faster.
I don't know. There's a lot of people that don't like characters to be in the game at all, and they'd rather just have it to be squad based. Yeah. Characters have a long history in GW where they used to just be the entire army, like especially in like the old Warhammer days. It would
Smash Captain.
No, I mean it was worse than Smash Captain. I forget the name that they used, but it was basically like character hammer, and you just used like the character. Hammer. That's it. Yeah, hero hammer, and you just didn't care what the rest of your army was just there to look pretty. And your characters are the only ones that did anything, and they moved away from that.
That was like second edition. I remember that. There was like characters that were. I remember there were characters in second edition that were like invisible. You couldn't even see them. You couldn't shoot at them. You couldn't target them, and they would like pop out of cover and mow down 10 guys on the other side, and then go back in the cover, and they were invulnerable again.
Yeah. Oh, and that did not go over well. So I think that, and also that's going to really not be lucrative for GW if you've only got a couple of like really cool models and then everything else is just trash. You're not going to buy a whole bunch of trash. You're going to buy some cool guys and then that's it.
Yeah, but a lot of the cool guys are really expensive.
That's true, but
people don't want to keep spending $60 on a box of 10 generic dudes. I'd rather spend $60 on a box of 3 really, really cool detailed like dudes.
Oh, that's the opposite of what I want. I want value. I want it to actually look like I got a deal of some sort.
Really?
Like,
I'm kind of with Josh on this one, man. I hate running into boxes where I paid, like you said, $60 for 3 guys.
Yeah, that is the worst.
I feel like
worst.
I feel so dirty, and then I want to put like 3 units of them together, and they're like 6-man or 9-man units.
Oh, that's true.
Now I just want to kill myself.
Yeah. Like $50 for 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
Same. Or like the Baron Guard. Where are they from? The AOS.
Oh yeah, those are the worst. It's like
Arcanum?
2 or 3 models for like $100, and you're just like,
3 models for $100. 3 dudes on horses.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty bad. I get what you're saying. You want some value. For me, a little bit more as a hobbyist, I just want really high detailed, really cool looking things and stuff to like have fun converting with. I'm starting to realize I like a little bit more of the chunkier, bigger models, just because you can kind of like really just move them around on the board instead of like shuffling and 100 blood letters or whatever it is. I'm tired of picking up big blobs of things. I want to like actually like make my robot stompy, 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 stompy.
So just really quickly, Steve Turner asked a question: when a turret weapon with multiple shots, fires at enemy vehicles, it gets multiple shots versus using blast templates. It could only ever get one shot. So I think what he's saying is like the blast weapons will be super bad against single large models.
They still roll random,
No.
and the minimum goes up per how many miles you shoot at it. So they'll still be just as effective. They just get more effective against little guys.
Which I think that brings us to another rule that we reviewed before this very, very important Zoom meeting. Which, by the way, people give me a Zoom stock. Just do it. But yes, we needed the minimum on blasts for the longest time because it was the sweetest salt to watch someone roll all their dice and everything came up ones and twos and you literally lost nothing to the entire barrage of missiles or cannons or whatever from their side. And just the best salt. And it was honestly just unfair because before it would have been 100 hits and 50 casualties easy, right? And now we're talking like nothing.
Yeah.
So I like the minimums very, very.
But the
very
minimums
much.
are only for, like, you talk about rule bloat. Like, there's more rule bloat. So you have vehicles. They have their special rules. You have a weapon. That weapon negates their special rules. And it has a new condition which requires you to count the number of models that's in the other person's unit that you're firing at in order to determine the minimum number of automatic shots that you get. Whew. Great. That's just 2 rules. You know what I mean? They can't just be like, blast weapons we're going to cut the total number of hits from blasts in half, but you're always going to get the half. Right? Like, I'd rather that. If you could have gotten 6, you're just always going to get 3. If you could have gotten 4, you're always going to get 2. It's like, no. Now, if it's 17 models or less, it's random. But if it's 18, it's a minimum of 3. And if it's 24, it's a minimum of 6.
It's only 10 and
whatever the numbers are.
I would have liked if it's
3 tiers.
Super simple. If it's not a vehicle, you get an extra die.
Yeah, I mean...
Or you don't have to roll to hit. Like like you said, pick something super simple, right? Because you could do a D6 and you don't have to roll to hit. Yeah, that'd be easy. That's the easiest thing in the entire world. That's what they should have done. Okay, I'm sold. I convinced myself.
I've always wanted to play 40K where you just use average dice rolls for everything.
You know what?
If there's no dice rolling, you just say what you're gonna do, and then you get your little average, and then that's what happens.
And so you can never make anything longer than a 6-inch charge.
I would never
Actually,
play 40K,
6.5.
man.
Sorry, 6.5.
I would never be able to play.
Charge. I think we should do that once. That sounds fun.
That would be amazing.
What are you talking about? The whole fun is picking the dice up and rolling them and watching people's faces as their little plastic soldiers melt. Like,
or what about when you have the same experience the opposite? So it can work.
I've lost a lot of games of 40K, and yes.
I think people have love-hate relationship with the dice, right?
I love dice. Even if they betray me, I love them. They can't do anything to make me not like them.
Yeah, I think it's something that's somewhat of an equalizer because of the chaos in the dice. You can play really well and definitely give you an advantage, but a really great player can just unfortunately roll really bad, and someone else can do really cool things.
I mean, the dice can't be that big of an influence when you look at like the top 20 players tend to be the same people over and over again.
Right.
So
that is true, but still, like top players. What I was getting at is top players when they're playing against each other, the dice can really make a big swingy effect there. And part of me, I kind of like that. I mean, I think for competitive players, They want that skill base and take the randomness out of it. But to make it feel like a game still, I want that randomness.
Well, and I want my not super fancy expensive character to have a chance to stand there and chop off a couple monsters' heads before he gets dragged down into the mud, right? Like, I got a Victrix Honor Guard who's just dope. He's got 2 wounds. He's nothing special. He's a Primaris Marine with a sword and a shield, and he's amazing because he just happens to be the dude who's up when the dice are hot. I don't know, but like, that builds into my narrative, and I really, really like that. And if I didn't have the dice to reinforce those very discrete situations and combats that I've gone through in the history of my collection, it wouldn't be the same collection for me.
It's funny,
right?
because
So
because Josh flips miniatures so fast that
he's got no attachment. He loves no plastic.
He has no attachment whatsoever. And
That's
honestly,
true.
honestly, Josh has moved me more towards his line of thinking and away from your line of thinking.
That's okay. Everybody's got different lines of thinking. That's the great thing about this game, is we're all allowed to enjoy it the way we want to, except for Josh. I'm sorry, I've been ragging on Josh all night.
That's cool, yeah.
But Aaron, so why do you think that you're kind of leaning more to the not being attached, to your artifacts?
Well, for one, there's so much variety and so much flavor and so many different things to try that getting really attached to something, particularly because you spent a bunch of money on it and then you spent a bunch of hours painting it, can hinder you from trying new things, right? And getting to explore other armies. And having the ability to get something to a certain point or acquire it easily and then flip it and try something new is great. It also allows you to stay more up to date with the meta.
That I will agree with.
And the bottom line, here's the thing. People can talk about casual and they can talk about competitive. I actually don't think there's a significant difference between casual and competitive. And let me tell you why.
I will tell you real fast that in my Apocalypse games, there is no casual about it. Like, it is for blood. Everybody is trying to murder everybody else as hard as they possibly can.
Even when you're friends, with that sentiment in mind, you need a strict code of rules to follow, and you don't want ambiguity and you don't want arguments when it comes down to the line on whether you hold the objective or whether you can or can't do that. You want to be playing by the same set of rules, and you want to be both following those rules because that's what creates this boundary that we call fairness. The only difference between competitive and non-competitive is the added stress of the tournament. The tournament itself, on top of imposing rules, adds this other level of fun / stress / circumstance that can heighten your emotions or make things more or less stressful. But from an actual rules perspective, from just the function of a game, I don't think there's actually that much of a difference between competitive and non-competitive. You want a strong functioning game rule.
And I to that point, I want to go ahead and talk about tournament prizes. I think you could get rid of a lot of that stress and have a lot more fun games if everything was like a door prize or something like that. No prizes for winning at all. Maybe a plaque, but no loot at all.
I mean, do you think I never played for the loot? I played for the glory. I don't care about the loot.
Yeah, but people still play D-bags when there's some monetary thing on the line.
You think the monetary thing adds?
Oh,
you think
100%.
Do you think that? So if coming in number one is here, coming in number one here with a trophy is here, and then coming in number one here with a trophy plus $1,000 of stuff is off the scale?
Yes.
Interesting, because for me, I don't care about the loot. I just want that Adepticon medal that I never got.
Well, a lot of people really, it does matter to them.
Yeah, no, being able to, even just being able to say that you placed first in a tournament, is a big thing to a lot of competitive players, right? And especially when you get to ITC, and if GW ever makes their thing, like there's ranking boards. You know, these guys have scores and all sorts of weird stuff that are very important to them, because that's, you know, the environment that they choose to function in. That's not particularly my type of scene anymore, but I get it, and I think that you will always have individuals who see a monetary prize or a, you know, a couple boxes of miniatures, and are going to, you know, break out the dirty tricks, or, you know, whatever bad behavior they have that's won them stuff in the past, and use that, right? You know, it's just kind of humans in competition, unfortunately. And I think that when you mix a prize in there, it's just comes to the forefront, you know.
When you randomize prizes, I think you can have people on both ends of the spectrum have fun. Like if you're a competitive player, you are wanting that first place. You want those bragging rights. You want that 3D printed, you know, sword or whatever to put up in your display cabinet.
Yep.
You know, you're doing it for the glory. If you're a new player, you know you're never. You go to that tournament, you know you're not going to get first place. So you should still be incentivized by like, oh, I might get a box of random Marines, you know, to get the feel goodsies for the new kids, you know, that are getting into it. Still get something out of it. You know, us hardcore, or not us, because I'm not really a hardcore player. But,
You're the hardest of cores.
They got, you know, all the models that they need. You know, they got what they need. They're gonna get it. They don't need another box. They don't need another Rhino or whatever it is.
Right. It's not quite the same as Magic, where people are actually winning enough packs to not only get the cards that they need so they don't have to buy them, but also to sell them, and is having some sort of financial stability by winning, you know, essentially a box a week or 2 boxes a week. Like it's not the same sort of thing as Friday Night Magic.
Right.
No, nor do I think it should be.
What do you think about the whether or not GW is going to push ITC out and take over the competitive scene? Do you think they should? Do you think they shouldn't? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Do you want them to? Do you not want them to?
What was the question? I'm sorry, the start of it.
Whether GW is going to take over the competitive scene and push ITC and other people who've been modifying their rules and running the tournaments out.
Well, there's nothing wrong with having multiple formats for competition. Like I think, don't the Australian guys, they have their own whole other format, and they have an app or something like that, and you know, they do their own thing. Aren't there other like circuits and whatnot here in the U.S.? And that's perfectly fine. There's no sense, like, you can have multiple circuits and multiple competitions, and it doesn't really matter. It's good to have an official one, though, right? I mean, that stabilizes the competitive scene. But I think my biggest concern is just how much they're going to take control of it and drive the meta with it, if they do.
Right, that's my concern. How, if they take control of it, how does that affect the decisions that they make on models and rules, and what does that do to the game?
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
But I'm mostly for GW taking it over. That's my opinion.
Would you want to watch more live stream games if Games Workshop took over the competitive scene? Knowing that it was going to be more of like their quality of videos instead of maybe no videos or someone's random rig over some table in a basement or something like that?
From a selfish standpoint, no, because I want people to watch CGN. But I mean, first of all, I'm not that interested in watching competitive, and I'm not that interested in playing competitive. Again, we've talked about that before, unless it's with my friends. So for me, it's not a matter of whether it's GW or ITC. I don't care. Not what I want to watch. But thinking about it abstractly, I would rather watch like a partner, like an Adepticon partner, hosting an event that has a GW official there. You know what I mean?
That's really important, because think about if all the major tournaments, let's say, you know, like the top level tournaments, are run by GW. they're not going to. It's not going to be the experience of going to like a con where you're going to be able to have a vendor hall of other distributors there, right? It's going to be
I
all
assume that it
GW.
would. I assume that it just would have been. It would be GW puts out an app and they put out the tournament rules and they decide the meta and they decide the changes. And ITC doesn't get to come in and say, actually, Space Marines function this way, and actually, we're going to run these scenarios. ITC can still exist as a league, but the league's rules will be GW's tournament rules, and there will be some sort of license or GW official at the convention making sure that that's what happens so that it's fair.
I will say there's like, unless it's a very large tourney, there's no way that a GW person is going to do that. It's not like a video game tournament where they have control of everything that's going on, and they don't have the manpower to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, but Josh, dude, they've got the resources to do it if they wanted to.
Yeah, but lucrative. I don't think it's going to be lucrative for them. Why would they take that away from people who are already going to do it? I think that getting the data that they're going to get out of the new app, if they do it right, is going to be sufficient enough. I think that's where they'll get the.
I know, but what I'm talking about is walking into a game store and finding out that they play by ITC rules and not by GW rules. And I think that that's what Games Workshop is going to clamp down on. Not necessarily that ITC exists, just that they're going to be in charge of the rules of the game.
Or what if they incentivize playing their rules simply by like doing like what Magic does by you can sign up and you can get free stuff to hand out and you get your little exclusives and whatnot. Maybe it's a exclusive like mini white dwarf that has some rule in it, or I don't know, your challenge coins, patches, and all that.
That would
they
be
already
awesome.
do that for a lot of stuff for their leagues. They do that for kill teams. They do that for a Warcry. They do that for a bunch of stuff already.
Oh, do they?
But only at
Yep.
the GW store.
No, they have it at a bunch of stores. Grognard's had it too,
Oh,
especially
really?
for Warcry. It's really big. Yeah, they got little trophies, stuff like that. The way they do it is they sell the pack to the store,
Okay.
and then they have like a season's worth of stuff to give to them.
Oh, you know what? I think I did see the kill team one before. Now that you mention it that way, yeah.
I think that GW needs playtesters though, so they better not like really piss off the people who play the game all the time on a competitive level.
Well, if they piss all those people off, then they don't really need play testers anymore, do they?
No, because
Whatever rules that they want now.
because you and I, because normal players still understand, like if we're just playing a normal game, narrative or not, and we can't figure out basic rules, like where does this drop pod land, then that's a problem. We'll start playing a different game.
Right.
Let's see. Do we have any other comments?
Like something like LVO would then become like the final big major event of the year for the official G-Dub circuit, or do you think G-Dub would have their own big sort of major event?
Well, they have most of their major events at Warhammer World. For the UK.
I don't know. I just think that Adepticon and ITC and Nova are going to be incentivized to not mess with the rules, I think is what's going to happen. And hopefully they'll be incentivized to not mess with the rules by putting out tournament-worthy rules in the first place.
Well, GW's already shown that in their own sponsored events, they will remove some of their own rules and they'll edit their own rules. Like, I think it was at Adepticon Kill Team, was it last year? That they're just like, oh yeah, we're not going to do the scouting phase because no one likes that phase. So, an entire phase of the game, but they're just like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And
Well, they've responded with like big rule changes for like how flying models work and stuff like that, like right after big tournaments. So
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, but that was like at the event, like it was announced in advance, like, hey, we're just gonna not have this whole phase. So I think that GW could very well say, you're gonna play by our rules if you want to be able to get the points. but we might change up the rules. Or what if this season we're implementing these new rules, or only X, Y, and Z units, or like this type of battalion can be taken, or incentivized to be taken. That's also another concern about them kind of manipulating how the seasons actually play out and how you can get points just based on however they want to play test it themselves live.
So I think that's a good point. I guess so long as it's GW making those changes and not third parties, I think that's going to be fine. But we'll see. I don't know if I necessarily agree that the tournament rules were always in the best interest of playing the game, and not necessarily and more in lines of the best interest for getting the most number of players to play in a game. And I don't know if that's always the right decision either. But what do you have on the table in front of you today, Aaron?
In front of me, I have some Caradron Overlords here. I have just gotten really hyped on Warcry, kind of like how I did with Kill Team. I just love the ability to like pull a couple different models from a bunch of different factions and just throw some together, get paint on them, and just kind of dabble around into different factions. So right now I'm converting up some Caradron Overlords that have little miniguns. Let's see. These guys are really cool. There's only one minigun that comes in a box, so I'm pulling and converting some other little miniguns because I want 4 of them, because they shoot 6 times, which is pretty cool. And they're such a force multiplier. They look like they're going to be fun. But this week I kind of went ham and started pulling out a bunch of models, and turns out I pretty much have Corn Demons warband just ready to go, a Skaven warband that's pretty much ready to go. I got these Caradron Overlords. So
Pretty
I
sweet.
got a lot of Warcraft projects.
And Sean, what are you working on?
Got this this samurai dude that I'm painting up.
How's it coming?
Pretty basic at the moment. You probably can't see anything. My lighting is absolutely terrible.
Sean, where's that samurai from? Do you know?
I'd have to dig it up in receipts and stuff like that. It was some random vendor online, but I mean, he's pretty good. The detail is nice. It's going to be a little interesting to do the bronze highlights on all the little metal clips and studs on the armor. So I mean, there's a fair amount of detail in there. So it's looking pretty good. He had a normal, just like human face, and I went ahead and I green stuffed one of the classic kind of samurai masks. I just got a picture off of the internet and did a little bit of green stuff work. So now he's got a mask. It's pretty cool.
I like that.
You're making that for your dad for Father's Day?
For the Father's Day present. Yep.
Well, now he knows if he's watching the stream.
Psh, he don't know.
You ruined it. I am reminded of a game that I loved called Legend of the Five Rings.
Oh,
And
yeah,
not-
L5R.
Not the LCG, the CCG.
Right.
Because I have a bunch of like first edition stuff from that game still. I love that game.
That game was great.
But I played the RPG of that.
Oh, I've always wanted to play that RPG. I would totally be a Shugenja.
It was a long time ago. I remember it was fun though.
Now I want to watch Ronin.
Yeah.
Watch it. Watch it.
Even though it doesn't have anything to do with Ronin other than the scene where the guy's painting miniatures of Ronin. I remember, I don't know, do you guys know what movie I'm talking about, Ronin? It's an action adventure where they're going after a case. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, so
Nope.
it's like
It's like a 70s cop movie?
no. It's from I think it's from the late 90s or early 2000s. It's pretty much like the movie is, I want to say 70% car chase, right? But there's a scene where the protagonist has to go get help because he got shot or he got hurt or something, and he goes in this dude's house, and the guy is building a full room terrain set that is feudal Japan with a castle and the trees and all this stuff, and the whole scene takes place where he's just painting, his Ronin, his model, and and it's like a metaphor for the entire movie. But I just remember going in there and being like, oh, I gotta go paint my Warhammer figures. Like,
That's what
it's just-
triggered you.
This is just so cool.
That's hilarious.
The movie made you want to paint miniatures, and talking about painting miniatures once you watch the movie.
Yes, it's Inception. All right, well, we're going on almost an hour and a half today, so I think that we are going to start wrapping this up. Final thoughts?
We didn't talk about the death card rules and how bad they
Oh,
are.
well, let's talk about that really quick. How bad are they?
Final thoughts: a 5-up invulnerable save for something that already has disgusting resilience seems a little redundant, and just makes it feel badsies for the opponent for not being able to kill anything.
Well, no, I think it'll minimally impact the ability for those models to stick around.
I
Honestly.
don't know. What is the discussing resilient already a 5-up?
It's a feel no pain of 6-up.
So it's a 5-up, 6-up.
Yes.
But there's a lot of bonuses, and the only unit that's going to be rolling 6-ups are the ones that are alone with no characters, no buffs, all that fun stuff. So I feel like pretty regularly I'm looking at 5-ups on anything that I actually care about killing.
Yes, I agree with you. And so you're going to be looking at a 5-up, 5-up, which I believe statistically is the equivalent of a 3-up. But it doesn't feel that way when you shoot 100 shots and only 2 things die.
Well, I think that goes back to the effects that some of the spells and abilities that the Death Guard have on your actual 2-hit rolls, right? Because there's a bunch of stuff in there that's going to make it harder for you to hit. So yeah, you threw out 120 shots, but you didn't hit all of those. And now you've got, layers of re-rolling dice. And I don't know, a 5-up versus just a straight 3-up. I don't know if I would take that deal. This guy and his 6-up. I thought you played Death Guard, Josh.
He does.
It is 5-up. It's 6-up for the zombies.
Yeah, they're not important.
But you can up that. So yeah, so just really quickly, if you have 6 models, and they all get shot, and they all take a wound, and they're all gonna die, and you have a 5-up save. So 2 of them are going to survive, and then 1 more is going to survive from the 6. So that's 3. So that's the equivalent of a 3-up. So it essentially, yeah.
No, because you have to factor in. So you have to factor in that that one of those 4, the second one's, that's not an average of 1. It's less than 1.
Okay, so it's slightly worse than a 3-up save, but the difference is that a 3-up save on a Space Marine is way different than a 3-up save, or let's say a 3.5-up save on something that's the cost equivalent of 5 for 1. So
it's not great.
It's not super OP unless you can stack it, because I know that you can stack. Currently with Death Guard, you can definitely get better discussing resilience. The Blight Lord, right? Doesn't he raise it by 1 automatically?
No. There's nothing that increases your disgusting resilience. You can't get it to a 4.
But you can get it to a 5.
You might be able to get it on the zombies only.
Right. So then it's a 5-up, 5-up.
You have, as far as stratagems go, you have trench fighters, which gives 1 more attack with their knives.
Ooh.
I'm sorry. If you're getting into combat, they have the plague flails. I mean, come on. They have the giant axe. Give it to all of the melee weapons. It's a CP for that one time that they're going to get into combat, because they're on your plague marines. So they're only getting into combat if someone crashes into you, or you go take a rhino tax to get them up the board.
But it affects all your models on the board, correct?
No, it's 1 unit.
Or is it 1 unit?
Yeah, it's when a plague marine.
Oh, when a plague. Well, unless like what Sean pointed out earlier, unless there's some new unit like a bike or something where that becomes really important.
I want to start bikes.
Which is possible.
Deep strike Oxwalkers now. So that's cool.
Is it deep strike, or is it like a pustule popping and then guys falling from the sky?
Yeah, they're undead guys coming up from a shallow grave or something like but it's essentially the same. They have to be away from the board edge. 9 inch from the battlefield edge, and 9 inch from enemy models. So,
which is not a problem.
No.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a huge issue back when they started doing it, but there's so much stuff to get around it.
Wireless blood rush. So, this goes to, so what's kind of one of the things that's cool is they're going to do different, not Vex, what are they called, but different plague companies. So that'll be kind of interesting because they didn't have any fluffiness like that before. So now you can say, like, I'm part of this plague company or that one. Like, they showed off one is called the Poxmongers. So that'll be kind of interesting. Kind of wondering if I want to do some fluffy paint scheme on some dudes. But underwhelming altogether. But it's just the initial stuff that they showed off. So there could be cooler stuff coming.
Yeah.
So Josh, you're not happy.
I mean, it's just trash. Like, it's just trash rules that nobody's gonna play with. I mean, like Aaron said, it's just garbage. One of them is a relic, so you have to waste your relic on giving your crappiest models one extra save.
Is that for the invulnerable?
Yeah, it's a relic that you have to give to a specific character. It's not even like any character. You have to give it to a Blightbringer. So, yeah, I'm not too interested in them. They seem like fluffy, like pretty much worthless rules. So.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the lavender is airbrushed, so it's like a zenithal highlight with a light airbrush on top. Can't see it really great on those models. You can see it a bit more on the tank, which got a nice gradient going. So it was just airbrush the base layer, then airbrush this lighter layer, and now I'm just going through and doing details. I'm not doing a whole bunch of other super fancy techniques. Just wanted to give it a little bit of a nice transition. So thank you.
They're pretty.
They are pretty, and they're purple. Which apparently I did find out that purple and gold is an official company. I forgot what they're called now. But I was not able to find a combination that hadn't been thought of. Well.
Well, there are two of them. There's already two. Emperor's Children.
Well, Emperor's Children are chaos, are they not?
Right.
Yeah.
That depends on what point in time you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm talking about the point in time after, when 40K takes place. So, chaos.
In the warp or out of the warp?
Yeah, come on.
Oh my god. They're not Emperor's Children.
This is not a simple answer.
They're not Emperor's Children.
And then they also could be Sarpedon's people. I forget what they're called. They are actually Chaos Space Marines that don't think that. No. These are like, oh my gosh, hold on.
Their symbol's a chalice, I think. It was like a cool chalice thing.
I'll find it. Hold on.
So now that you're painting again, Sean.
Soul Drinkers.
Soul Drinkers. There we go.
Nice.
What are you excited to work on?
I won't lie, man. I've got a bunch. So my current issue in life with 40K right now is I have about a trillion and a half Primaris Marines, and they're all built and they're all cleaned up and they're all ready to go. And I cannot for the life of me decide how I want to paint them, right? Because I have an extensive army of Dark Angels that have been in pieces for a long time. It's primarily Terminator, First Company, Ravenwing. It's all the specialized stuff. So there's not a lot of like regular green Dark Angels. I have an extensive and fairly along the way painted Ultramarines army. So I have I can field 4,000 points of completely painted, decaled, finished models. And then I've probably got another 10,000 points of Marines after that, right? So I don't know what chapter to make these guys. And I'm also kind of really in love with this idea of priming them all silver and then washing them with one of the new GW, what are these stupid things called?
Contrast? Yeah. So
using
check this out.
contrast on
So
top
it's funny
of
that
silver.
it's funny that you say that. I'm going to hold this to the the painting camera, and then I'm going to hold it to my zoom camera.
You got a painting camera?
Yeah. So this is red over silver. This is what is it? Blood Angels red over silver. That's exactly what my other option that I was thinking about doing.
Is there any way you can focus that? Because I can't.
I will send you a picture of it. I will tell you that I will tell you this. It does not look as good as the other technique of doing the really, really fine chrome that you airbrush and then use the Tamiya. Which color was it, Josh? Tamiya Candy Apple Red.
Clear red.
Tamiya
Oh,
Clear
right.
Red.
So getting that candy coat, is that what you're trying to go for?
I don't know, man, because like I saw some just really amazing Space Marines that were almost like a pearlescent teal.
Yeah,
right.
It's a chrome. It's a non-water based chrome base coat that's super shiny, and then it's a Tamiya clear that goes over it, and it's either they have a blue one and they have a red one, and I think they have a green one. And it's amazing, but you have to airbrush it, and you have to use those 2 steps.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing is, I mean, I really, because there's so many of these guys, right? I want something that I can do super quickly. So ideally, an airbrush, base coat, and the vast majority of the painting would be awesome. I have a huge Black Legion army that I'm just like tired of painting gold trim. So like I love them. They're super cool models. I did a bunch of neat little weird stuff with all the new stuff, but like I'm so tired of painting gold trim.
I think you should.
And
I think you should do the Candy Apple Red. I'll send you some videos on how to do it. It's the hardest part is going to be just getting the materials, and then you just set up your airbrush and you'll whip through them. You'll be done in an afternoon.
Yeah, but then I got to detail them, and that'll be 4 years from now.
Well, each step. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us once again on our Wednesday Night Live Paint and Talk. Hopefully we'll be back at you next week. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that bell button if you want to get updates. Check us out at our website, coolguysnation.com. And if you want to take your patronage to the next level, check out our Patreon. Our longest standing patron is on this stream. I wonder which one it is. It's not Sean.
Nope.
That's for
Definitely not Josh.
Definitely not Josh.
Ooh.
And as always, Josh, I'm teeing it up for you. We'll see you on the
Table.
Have a good night.